What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fourth and Frames, our weekly fantasy football podcast here at fantasyandframes.com, getting you ready for all your week's matchups. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and with me we got Nate Markham. Nate, how you doing, man?
Good, buddy. Good. It's next to last week for most, right?
Yeah, seriously, it's coming down to that time. A little bittersweet, but to be honest with you, as grueling as this season has been, I want it to be over in terms of like I want vindication, justification, or dejection. I need some closure is basically where I'm going with. Hopefully no dejection, but I'm hoping there's some closure. Because man, it has been a heck of a ride, and we've been having fun giving you all great fantasy football advice to help navigate you through these murky waters. Yeah, man. So how are things? How are things going with you, man? How's your week been so far?
It's good. I mean, it is. I would say a lot less "quote unquote" stressful or fun when you don't have many teams left in the playoffs. You can watch football, I guess, and not have rooting interest. But I do have 3 leagues. Our staff league, our charity league, and then the Kings Classic league. So let's hope for a 3-0 weekend and 3 championships to go for, and that's the ultimate letdown. That's when dejection really losing this week sucks a lot. Right. But it's like, oh well, it's over. I move on and go. Losing next week is the week that sits around for a minute. That's the one that you look at and you go, why did I start insert name? And let me ask you a question. Are you good enough with yourself to get to those moments where you don't beat yourself up over these stupid I spend more time telling people when they're like, oh, if I had only started insert name, take out name. And I spend 10 minutes going, why would you ever do that? You did the right thing. Don't beat yourself up over a decision that you shouldn't have done. And I find that the more time you put into it and the more work, the less likely you are to beat yourself up over I should have started Chigakonkwo over Travis Kelce. Damn it. I was even thinking, it's like, no, you weren't. You never in a million years were going to do that. Don't beat yourself up over something stupid that you had no control over.
Yeah, I not really. I think for me, it's more about that, like getting into the playoffs. Once I get into the playoffs, I'm kind of like, all right, wherever God takes me. At this point, it's like set my lineup the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what helps with that. Like, okay, let's use an example here. Like, we're in the Kings Classic, you're in the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. Representing Fantasy and Frames. Awesome job, by the way. Thanks. You compete with all these industry experts, right? And then you have, like, let's say, God forbid, you lose in the championship week. It's a little, right. It's kind of like, man, I might be overanalyzing my decisions here and there just because, like, you are taking on all these peers and you're just kind of like, you want to like measure up to your peers type of. I can understand that scenario where it's like, I'm beating myself up for not doing enough research like they did or something. Mm-hmm. For like a home league, my overanalysis of what went wrong ends when my second place money gets deposited into my PayPal or Venmo. In which case I'm like, well, that sucked, but hey, I got some money out of it, so whatever, cool. I'm alive in 3 leagues. One is Ken Sonnenberg's family league. Ken Sonnenberg of Fantasy and Frames. I beat his brother, and now I'm taking him on this week, so hopefully I can cruise through both Sonnenbergs and get that trophy next week. And then in our charity league, advanced, and in my work league. So it's I had a bye this week or last week, so it's one more week to go to the championship. So it's
so out of 60 leagues combined, we're in 6 left. So good job. Exactly. Good job, us. Everybody keep listening. Tune in. Exactly. Get dynamite advice.
Exactly. And I'm glad we said that as the 0 viewership icon is at the top left corner of the screen. Fantastic. No, we appreciate you all watching whenever you do watch or listen, and whenever you do listen. Got a question here from a coworker who his name is Parker. He sent me this, and at first for me it was like a no-brainer, and then the Nick Foles news happened. Michael Pittman or Zach Moss this week in half PPR? I'm still leaning Pittman just because it's Michael Pittman, but is there any rationale for Zach Moss this week?
I mean, the rationale is that he has a workload like he had last week. The concern about that is, in order for him to have that established workload, I think they have to have a lead or be in the game. Like against Minnesota, they jumped out to that 33-0 lead, and they could run the ball. Maybe that's what they did wrong to allow them to give up said 33-point lead. Right. But against the Chargers, I don't know if it's going to be as easy as it was against Minnesota. But that being said, I still lean Pittman. Just even with the Nick Foles news, it doesn't scare me off as much. I don't think it's as big of a drop as, like, say, in Arizona, who we'll talk about in a little bit later, and how big of a drop that could be potentially. But if you look at what Pittman's done lately, it's been, I mean, really, really good. I mean, last week obviously is unattainable, but nearly 50% target share and 42% air yard. It is, I mean, it's Pittman or bust pretty much there. So I'm going to go Pittman.
Well, there you go, Parker. 2 on board for Pittman. It's it's why we're here. We answer your questions. Speaking of answering questions, obviously, for those who celebrate, it's Christmas on Sunday, Christmas Day. We will not be doing our pregame show on Christmas Day, and we will not be doing it on Christmas Eve. What we will be doing, however, and when we'll be doing it, is we'll be doing our pregame show on Friday evening. Rationale: all but 3 games are being played on Saturday. So let's just get you covered. It will be starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I think Keith from the Daily Fix Pod will be with me, and then Nate will jump in when he's able to. And whoever else we can get on the show, we'll get on the show, and we'll be answering all your start and sit questions heading into the semifinals of the fantasy football playoffs. So we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you and talking with you and answering your questions. And of course, as we do every week on the pregame show, we go game by game, talking about all the fantasy relevant players, both on offense and for IDP. Speaking of IDP, make sure you stay with us on our YouTube channel next hour as Nate leads the crew over on Shoot the Gap to get you ready for your IDP leagues in the semifinals of the fantasy football playoffs. And with that, let's get into some news and notes for the year. We talked about, you just mentioned the Colts and Vikings last week. Man, imagine drafting Jonathan Taylor number 1 overall, and then the first play of the game, he's done for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Was that you? Did you draft Jonathan Taylor
one overall? I did, yeah. In some, I didn't get many because I didn't have a ton of 1 spots, but I do have a lot of McCaffrey. But I mean, it's just I'm sighing and laughing collectively for everybody that has them. Not laughing out of humor, out of pain. Whenever it's like miserable and you do that, the humor, that's the laugh. It's not laughing at, it's laughing with. When it's like, what can you do? What can you do? The most, can't miss number 1. Got to go with it. And first damn play of the first round of the playoffs and quarterfinals, and he's gone. So.
Yeah, you have to substitute the laughing for crying sometimes. And,
absolutely.
We got DJ regular here on our YouTube asking, "What's up, dude? Congrats, he made it to the semis.
I'm right.
Won by 1.8 points. Man, that is close. Congratulations, man. Got a question. McSorley starting, bad weather for Arizona on Thursday, and possibly Herbert, possibly active. Pick 2, full PPR, ETN, Hopkins, Montgomery." When he says Herbert possibly active,
he's active about Khalil Herbert, and he's wondering if that's going to dip into David Montgomery's workload.
Gotcha.
I don't believe that will be the case yet. I can't see them activating him and immediately him getting a workload like that.
Right. Yeah. I wrote about Herbert in our waiver wire article that went out a day late. Sorry, folks. And I told you, pick him up if you have the bench spot, at least for, if not this week, next week, potentially next week. Just with the season going the way it is for the Bears, they probably don't want to expose Justin Fields to too much more, in terms of rushing attempts and getting, hit all over the place and ruining their quote unquote investment heading into the multiple seasons. And when you look at Herbert, he hasn't, I think, in games played this season, he's averaged less than 5 yards per carry once. So he is super efficient on the ground. He just doesn't get the volume. And I think maybe the volume And week 17, maybe that comes to fruition depending on how things turn out this week. To answer your question, however, which is a good one, by the way, full PPR, Hopkins. See, I was on board Hopkins with Colt McCoy. I still thought that was a good one. Now you're taking 3 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. It's kind of like I kind of am leaning Etienne and Montgomery, but it's it's kind of hard to rationalize sitting Nuke. But I think I'd go the safer approach and take the running backs here. What about you, Nate?
And that's what I'm kind of looking at myself. And it's like, and each matchup is so tough. And that's what makes it challenging. Is Etienne should be the easy of the 3, if you ask me, but he's going against a Jets defense that is 24th against running backs. You never know. The game script is the weather should be not there yet, from what I understand, tomorrow. So I'm comfortable in that the game's not going to be disrupted by weather. But unfortunately, with the game, I was kind of almost hoping it was going to be, because then that fades the receivers and leans more on the running game. But I'm still going to go ETN. This is the dilemma, bud. And I'm going to lean both running backs, and I think I'll back it up with the DeAndre Hopkins conversation later. And like I said in the pregame, DJ, Jorge and I were saying how a lot of our fades and plays have an impact in the weeks coming up, or this week coming up. And I have DeAndre Hopkins in a couple different leagues that I need production, and I have no choice. In a 14-team 3-flex spot, I'm not sitting DeAndre Hopkins. So I want to say Hopkins so you and I can, go to the ship together. But unfortunately, I don't want to see a sinking ship. So I'll throw you the life draft and tell you to take both the running backs. I'll play the violin on the Titanic and watch it go down with Trace McSorley at the helm.
So I actually have a question for you, Nate.
Shit.
I know, right? So I have in a league, so Ken's Brothers League, okay. They allow bonuses, which I hate for God knows so many reasons, and they're fully aware of that. They get bonuses all time. Oh, absolutely, especially when the loss happens. Absolutely. But so you get 4 or 5 points for 100-yard game.
Yeah.
Half PPR, so on and so forth. So I have Nuke as my wide receiver 2 in that league. Mm-hmm. My other options at wide receiver are Deontay Johnson and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I know that's Donovan Peoples-Jones. I mean, he's been playing really well. I mean, he's been the consistent one, but with Trace McSorley here as a quarterback, I mean, does it come down to Deontay and him? And if so,
it definitely comes down to Deontay, because I think that game in Cleveland is going to be so bad, and it's hard to predict right now with the weather. But everything is saying that weather's going to be gusts of up to 40 miles an hour.
Right.
We've already seen Deshaun Watson pretty much obliterate every other receiver's value on that team.
True.
And I've talked about Deontay for the past couple weeks now, and that he's, here's a guy that's got 120 targets, I believe it is, on the season. He's got 15 red zone targets. He's top 10 in both of those categories, but no touchdowns. And so I think we said this on Sunday morning. The question was when I posed those stats. Oh, so then it's bound to be touchdown regression, and he's going to score. And you would think so. Wasn't it? What week was it last year that Jacoby Myers got his first touchdown? It wasn't this late, but it was late. And so
right.
I might go Deontay over DeAndre Hopkins, Jorge.
Yeah, that
sucks, man.
It's not ideal. Let's see what else we got here. You got DJ saying he definitely thinks Hopkins still gets crazy volume, just don't think a lot of upside. Yep, that's then he says here, hopefully Quinnen Williams is out tomorrow for Jets run D. You'd start ETN with confidence if Williams was out. You and me both, brother.
Unfortunately, I think Williams is going to play. I mean, I think he's got limited practices so far. You're hoping that, you're hoping you can get 5 or 6 receptions out of ETN and bank that floor out of the upside from the PPR, so good luck, man. I hope we see you next week at this time, and you tell us you won by more than 1.8, so you don't have to sweat Monday night nearly as much.
Heading on to the next piece of news, Jalen Hurts Yeah, he may not play this week, which sucks for me on so many levels because I have him in a lot of places. Gardner Minshew would be the next person in. You rolling with Gardner Minshew?
Oh man, no, I'm not. I think that Gardner Minshew has the one thing that is probably the most dangerous: moxie and like flair. Now, I don't mean like Applebee's flair on your shirt, but enough that people want to play him and they want to ride. There's nothing better. I think that if you had your choice between someone like, say, Aaron Rodgers or Gardner Minshew, Rodgers has been surprisingly not as terrible as we want to give him and beat him up for.
Right.
As far as, just play, it's not been amazing. But I think it's just not fun. I think people would rather win with Minshew. That being said, I don't think I can, especially against Dallas. That pass rush is going to be, it's going to be a great matchup. I'm really excited to watch that. I really wish it was Jalen Hurts so it would be a better game. But the last time they played, didn't they have Cooper Rush?
They did have Cooper Rush.
So Dallas gets a little game where they don't have to face. So there you go. Maybe that'll be a little revenge to see what happens. And Dallas wins that game, I'm sure, without Jalen Hurts.
Maybe they're saving best on best for the playoffs at some point.
Exactly. Some friends.
Right.
I have some of the guys that come over to watch the games with us. My daughter's boyfriend and his friends. They're big Eagles fans. And they even said they're like, we don't know if we want to win because the old adage, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. And they're like, we don't want that third time to lose when you do be in the playoffs. So I think they're happy to concede a loss if it really held true that they would win the playoffs.
Right. So speaking of what's up? What's the matter?
The DJ, look at this. Pull it up. Oh man, God,
right. What you got for us, DJ?
Oh no.
I'm in a pickle with Minshew right now. I got Lamar. He looks like he might sit. Only other options are Zach Wilson, Darnold, Pickett, Foles. You know what you got? You don't got a situation. You got some Minshew mania, baby. That's what you got.
Minshew magic.
We just went through that.
We just said, let's do it, D. Let's go.
Balls to the wall.
Oh no, DJ. I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah, I can't recommend anybody here other than Zach Wilson has played well the past couple. Last week he played well.
No, he didn't. Zach Wilson sucks. Don't start Zach Wilson.
Minshew mania, ride the mania.
Please don't start Zach Wilson.
So you're saying Minshew?
I would start Minshew over every one of those names that you just gave me, and hope that AJ Brown and Devonta Smith can just do something with that and turn that into production. I'm sorry, brother. That's
so you may end up winning by 1 point in again, but you'll still be winning. So that's all that matters.
Exactly. That's all that matters.
Pray for his soul. Yes, we will. Let's go. Speaking of injuries, let's go to Chicago. We got a player coming back from IR, and that's Khalil Herbert. This is. We talked about this earlier. It's interesting what's going to happen here. Maybe not this week. Maybe he gets eased back into production. But that's the thing. Even when he was healthy, he wasn't really utilized. It wasn't like a 2-headed running back approach here for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that changes. Next week.
Maybe
another week where where Justin Fields is getting beat the crap, beat the hell, and they may decide, hey, let's take it easy on this quarterback. Let's utilize these 2 running backs who are super efficient. So definitely, I think if he's on your waiver wire, still, I would if I had a spot, I would pick him up for some depth. You never know, injuries happen. Obviously, we know that, and situations happen. So he's definitely very talented, very efficient on the ground. If he was given the opportunity, I thought he would outperform Montgomery hands down. So just pick him up if you can.
Mm-hmm.
For Baltimore, Devin Duvernay is out for 2 months. I don't really know if this is really any viable news here. I think Baltimore it's really becoming, J.K. Dobbins and maybe Mark Andrews.
Yeah, that's about it.
But J.K. Dobbins for your Ravens here. When we're going down the list of running backs who are questionable heading into Week 11, I feel like when you look at our rankings, like every other name is like Q for questionable.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up a very good point in our pregame show that maybe this is more of like, if we're looking at practice reports today compared to tomorrow, maybe this is today more of like a veterans rest day of sorts. And then tomorrow is really whether practice reports will tell you a little bit more information about Saturday. Can you speak on that a little bit?
That's what I would guess. I can't take total credit for that. I was listening to another podcast on the way in, and they were conversing about players not playing, and brought up the idea that with 11 games on Saturday, maybe that shifted the workload and the Veterans Day off a day earlier. And I don't know that. I haven't got confirmation on some of these, but like a player like J.K. Dobbins, who didn't practice yesterday, there was concern that maybe there was something that re-aggravation, but it was just a routine day off, which was, again, kind of a little early for that. And so I think it's something to pay attention to. I think tomorrow will probably be a more important day for practice reports, which is, a little more, it's a little stressful because this weekend is cramped. Everybody's got a lot of stuff going on, and the last thing you want to do is miss any news. So we will do our best to make sure that any information I see, I will pump out. Any information that Jorge sees, he will pump out as well.
Absolutely. And of course, you can follow us on our Twitter accounts, as you see on the bottom of the screen, at Jorge B. Edwards, at Nate Markham. And with that, let's get into, let's do a little bit backwards. We did this with Tyler a couple weeks ago where we were like, let's end the show on a positive note. So let's go our fades first, and then we'll pay the bills, so to speak, and then we'll go into our plays to cap us off this week. So let's see. I'm taking on quarterbacks and running backs. Quarterbacks, here's the thing. I commend Ryan Tannehill for coming back after being carted off the field. I commend Ryan Tannehill for a lot of successes he's had over his career. We all know that I'm a big Tannehill fan, the past few seasons. This ain't the week to get cute with the Jalen Hurts injury and think, I'm going to start Ryan Tannehill. This Texans team has been playing very inspired football the past couple weeks. One against Dallas, one against your Kansas City Chiefs, Nate. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their success has been against the receiver position. So, with limited upside here for receiving options for Ryan Tannehill, I don't see this as an optimal streaming options here for you. As if you have a Matt Ryan, or if you, which I don't know, God, why would you have Matt Ryan as quarterback at this point? But then, injuries happen. You never know. Exactly. Yep. You don't have him anymore. Or you have Jalen Hurts. I would get rid of that. Brock Purdy, I think the luster has kind of worn off a little bit. I think it's especially this week against the Commanders, who aren't exactly friendly at the quarterback position. Maybe quarterbacks that scramble, they are, but that's not really Brock Purdy's game. I think he's more of a facilitator of getting the ball into the people's hands. But this is, as much as we like to, say that Washington should have a hard time against the 49ers, I think the same can be said for the 49ers. I think, Washington is definitely underrated. They came out flat. I'll grant you that against the Giants this past weekend. But in any event, not Brock Purdy. I don't know why you'd be starting Brock Purdy, maybe in a super flex, but I don't even know if you'd really want to start him in a super flex. Same thing goes for Ryan Tannehill. Definitely not his options if you're the Jalen Hurts manager and you want. I would start Gardner Minshew over those two quarterbacks. Yeah. Sticking with going to running backs as far as my fades. So Brian, we talked about the 49ers defense. Brian Robinson, not seeing that being a thing. One of the things I thought was really interesting last week watching the 49ers and the Seahawks game was, our guy, Talanoa Hufanga, played back closer to the line of scrimmage. He made some plays. He made that sack in the backfield. He disrupted things again. He was like, whoa, where was this? Where have you been? We missed you. We missed you up close to the line of scrimmage. I think, that this is Washington's MO. They run the ball, they set up play action, and they try to play good defense. And Ron Rivera came out and said this week, that's our identity. We run the ball and we set up play action. It's worked great for many teams for many years. And I'm like, yep. And it helps when you have a quarterback who can deliver on the play action. Or as well as don't fumble the ball or don't fumble the ball. Anyhow, getting a little sidetracked. Where I'm going with that is Brian Robinson running up the gut here of the Commanders going against the 49ers defensive line. Not exactly something I'm recommending this week. Although I will say this. If I had to pick a Washington Commanders running back, I actually would go Gibson this week. I think he's a little bit more elusive than Robinson. Robinson's more of a straight up the gut runner. I think, to evade these, athletic freaks for the 49ers on the edge, they may need some of Gibson there. So if I had to pick for upside here, I would go Gibson over Robinson, but definitely both as a whole, just it's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah.
The next one I got here is one of your guys, Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco. We thought for the longest time that he was safe. He had a solid rushing attempt floor, not really a lot of usage in the receiving game. Oh, well, they'll just get it to Jerick McKinnon occasionally. McKinnon has he's played very damn well. You look back here since week 13 in terms of snaps, offensive snaps here, Pacheco 25 to McKinnon's 26. Then week 14, Pacheco's 29 to McKinnon's 39. Last week, offensive snaps, 27 to Pacheco, 48 to Jerick McKinnon. We look at half PPR and full PPR leagues. We're looking at targets per snap. Pacheco, week 13, 8 to McKinnon, 7.7. And then McKinnon, 23.1 to 10.3. And then McKinnon last week, 16.7 to 3.7. I mean, this guy he's that man. He's the guy. He has to be the guy.
Now. So here's my take on that. I don't know if I still believe that necessarily. I believe that McKinnon is in the quote unquote must start territory. But last week against the Texans, number one is you can't go back and change what happened. What happened is they had, multiple turnovers that led to short fields. Houston had the ball, putting Kansas City from behind. They were chasing the entire time, and that sets up for Jerick McKinnon. There's no doubt. The idea in the game script was supposed to be Pacheco. So anybody that had Pacheco as a must start or a good start, I think the process was still correct. Results varied as a result of the game. The week before, we have a Denver Broncos game. What happened? The same thing happened. For some reason, KC couldn't get that easy commanding lead over Denver. They're forced to go to overtime, and they had to rely on a more pass-heavy attack, i.e. Jerick McKinnon. And you even go to week 13. Week 13, you have who? Cincinnati Bengals, who have Kansas City's just their number. Kansas City's trailing again. You have 3 games in a row where Kansas City's trailing and or in a neutral game script the majority of the time, which doesn't lead to an Isaiah Pacheco-led game. Here's the concern I have. I think Seattle should be that game like they had last week against Houston, but I worry that KC's defense, could allow Seattle back in this game. So everything you're saying is not incorrect. The concern is that the reasoning for McKinnon over Pacheco is not because I think that they want him to be their lead back. It's because of a game script that got out of hand for Kansas City. That's what I believe is the real case.
I think the another question you have to ask, or I guess you just brought it up, is do you believe Seattle can make this a competitive game?
And that's
I think they can.
I do too.
I think they can. No Tyler Lockett this week, which may impact a certain wide receiver that may or may not be talked about later. I think they can keep. I don't know if they can keep up with Kansas City, but they could truly make it competitive and close. I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I guess for me, it's they could have utilized. I think for PPR, I think they could have utilized or have PPR Pacheco more in the receiving game, but they clearly have designated Jerick McKinnon as the primary beneficiary. And let's be honest, going back to Andy Reid's days in Philadelphia with Brian Robinson, not Brian Robinson.
Nope. That's all right.
Brian Westbrook. Thank you.
Yep.
He always loves throwing to pass catch, always scheming for these pass catching running backs. So I don't know. It's interesting. But if we're going with the logic that Seattle can keep it close with Kansas City. So that's why I'm leaning more McKinnon than Pacheco this week. And then my last one here is Cam Akers versus the Denver Broncos. And if I have to explain that one, folks, let's be honest. That's probably not a great option. What do you got for us for the other two positions on offense here? Oh, go ahead.
Before we jump in,
Oh yeah.
I hate to do this because this is going to be really a difficult spot for.
You don't have anything upstairs on the counter.
Well, that's Carrie. She's telling me that it doesn't matter ultimately. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. She's bringing me
our brand ambassador,
yes.
Carrie Markham. Okay, thank you.
I asked her to bring me a specific drink. It was the Redbreast 12-year Irish. It's probably back in the cabinet, but instead she brought me a delicious High West Old Fashioned premix.
How about that?
It is an excellent. If you're a bourbon drinker, this is a good. Oh, and ice cubes.
Look at you.
Okay.
I have A&W root beer. That's what I got.
A&W root beer is delicious with Crown Royal or whatever. Okay, so DJ, here we go. Team 1. This is so what I did is while I wrote these down and I didn't do the projected points to give you who's going to win. What I did is I decided at each position who wins between the two, and I think they're close enough that you go, unfortunately, it's going to be probably Minshew versus Dak.
Yeah.
Dak gets that. But I don't think it's going to be as crazy because, again, this Philadelphia defense is pretty difficult, but we're leaning Dak, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Austin Eckler against David Montgomery. I have to lean Austin Eckler.
Yep. And Pollard. Yeah,
and
Eckler.
So Pollard versus Saquon Barkley. Thanks, Care. I actually would say I'm going to probably lean Saquon in that situation.
Okay.
Just strictly, I think Minnesota is just meh and defensively. I think every aspect that New York has to stay in the game and push Barkley's, direction and hit his number is a little more likely. All right, so now we have 2 for Dak and Eck. We have Barkley over Pollard, which is close.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Stephon Diggs.
Yep. Over Pittman.
I'm going to take A.J. Brown over Brandon Ayuk, even though that's close. Because that would then, if he has a big game, that means Minshew, double dip, not a bad problem.
That's true.
Taking Kittle over Evan Ingram. As much as I like Ingram, I think that Jets defense is a little more difficult. This is the closest one for me. Travis Etienne and Deontay, because in a full point PPR, Deontay with the targets, I would probably, I'm going to call that a split. And then defense, I don't know how much the defense scores, but I would probably lean Baltimore just because of the weather and the situation. So, you know what that means.
I think team 2, is what you're saying here. No, am I wrong? Right?
Well, it turned out it's 4-4. And it's a split.
So what we're saying, DJ, is your game is going to be competitive.
1.8. That's it.
Well,
it's going to come down to Monday night. Well, hold on. Who plays Monday night? Chargers and the Colts. Oh, son of a bitch, too. You know what makes it even worse? The only person going in that, he has 2 people go. He has to face Eckler and Pittman on Monday night, and he's going to be up by like 42. And that's what it's going to be. Is it's going to come down to like Pittman and Eckler needing 42 points, and it's going to be a sweat fest, or 38, something like that.
Wait, is he team 1 or team 2? I can't.
Yeah, he's team 1 because remember he asked us about ETN.
Oh,
he
right.
asked us about
right.
Lamar and Minshew.
Right.
It's okay. I pay more attention to you.
You do. I have attention issues. What can I say?
No, you have a lot more going on.
I wish I was a kid. I appreciate the detail you giving me. Wow, you guys have been so much help this year. I will give you guys first notice if I get through the championship.
Hey, just win the championship. That's all I care about.
That's right.
I don't need props or anything. I'm not taking them, but
touche. All right, what does he say? He says, I'm going to be sweating on Monday. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. It's yep. Who we got at wide receiver, Nate, that you're fading this week?
Yep. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of it, hope versus want, and not what I want, is DeAndre Hopkins. The Trace McSorley talk is just too much. I mean, Tampa Bay, the matchup, I don't really mind. I wouldn't, if it was Colt McCoy or Kyler, I would be just as fine. I don't really sweat too much about the Tampa Bay secondary as much as we should in terms of the names. The one-on-one matchup wouldn't bother me, but I do worry about McSorley. He came in last week. It was Denver. I give him a pass on that as far as having a bad game. And by bad game, I mean a really, really bad game where like 15% of his passes were turnover worthy. And he did have 2 interceptions. It was just ugly all around. I don't think Tampa Bay, their defense is going to be much easier against him than what Denver was. I think they're going to blitz like crazy. I think he's going to be running for his life. I think Hopkins is going to get targeted heavily. I think we'll probably see a 30% target share. But I don't believe that's going to amount to much more than probably maybe like 5 catches out of 11 targets, something like that, for probably maybe 40, 50 yards, which just unfortunately is the wide receiver 13 wouldn't be enough. I hope that I'm wrong, because I think clearly we've talked enough about DeAndre Hopkins, and that's my my guy going into Kings Classic. So I hope I'm wrong. I just hope I'm not wrong for everybody else. Kind of selfishly, if that's it. That's it. I mean, sorry, everybody. Man's got to look out for himself.
Yeah,
number one. Take care of number one.
You can't take everybody else. You can't take care of number one.
Exactly.
So,
hey, fantasy dog, man. These guys, look at this. They're really
y'all rock. Great takes, easy listen. Thank you for watching and listening.
Every week, positive.
We appreciate you.
It's not positive.
What's this one? Oh, he's got a question here. Watson greater than Hopkins, right? Christian Watson, yes,
man, I think so.
Yeah. Did you hear Aaron Rodgers' interview after the game where it's like, you still mad at Christian Watson? He's like, well, he wants to catch touchdowns. He better run the right routes. What can I say?
That's great.
That's the one like he was running away and he pegged him like in the back. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty funny.
No, it was, and that matchup was great because Miami against the wide receivers are, I would say, pretty generous as a whole. They're not like top 5 or top 10, but they're the middle of the pack. And I just think that game is going to be designed for high scoring. And like I said, Aaron Rodgers getting pieces back. Romeo Doubs is that first matchup back in the first week back. A little scary for maybe Christian Watson owners, just simply because I think that they saw an increased looks go Doubs' way. But I would still think he wants to lean towards the touchdown freak that is Christian Watson. On to fade number 2. We've talked about him again or before, and that's that weather in Cleveland, that 15 to 40 mile an hour gusts. And Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 24. I think a lot of people are starting to fade him because I think his value for a person who through week 8, or through week 12, before Deshaun Watson took over, he was the wide receiver 8. And I think we all were like, man, we were way wrong on Amari Cooper. How stupid were the Cowboys for getting rid of him? What we thought is, how good is he now? Think how good he's going to be when Deshaun Watson returns. Holy shit. And look what happened. He goes from wide receiver 8 to wide receiver 51.
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper as far as their ability to hook up. I do think, though, that this weather is just going to be horrendous. We're going to talk about this low implied point total. And I think that Amari Cooper just disappoints, as does the entire Cleveland team. Maybe except for if Nick Chubb plays. And if he doesn't, then I would say it is a definite I don't know anybody else that might benefit. Kareem Hunt, I guess, is probably the only person that I'm thinking of that would even be beneficial whatsoever.
See, I don't even know if that's true.
I know.
It's not like he's not had the opportunity with Chubb on a limited basis to do anything. I think that's a story when we do our year in review show that we talk about. It's like, what the hell happened to Kareem Hunt being a viable RB2?
You know what I think is going to happen as a result of this? I think next year a team is going to get Kareem Hunt because he's gonna be gone. They'll let him go and he'll sign somewhere. And I think Kareem Hunt's going to be one of those 5th round, 4th round picks that, if he goes to a team that has no running back, he'll probably move up draft boards because he'll be the lone guy there. But I think we'll be talking about Kareem Hunt a lot more next year, going into drafts when he's on a different team, that the opportunities will be there. We'll see.
We shall see.
Where you want to go next?
Let's go tight end.
Hooray. I hate fading tight end because fade everybody. But here's the one thing that I looked at, and I think it's because of where he's coming. It's the first week back. The excitement is palpable. Dallas Goedert coming back to play in divisional matchup against the Cowboys. The one thing I don't know is what Minshew will mean to Dallas Goedert. What Dallas means to Dallas Goedert, meaning Dallas's defense, is that he has never done well against Dallas. Dallas as a whole against everybody else on the season is excellent. I mean, just in general, Dallas is fourth lowest or fourth stingiest against opposing tight ends, an average of 6.4 points per game. And if you look back at Dallas Goedert's career against Dallas Cowboys, it gets confusing to say. I don't like doing it like that. I'm just going to say, historically in this matchup, he has not fared well. And I don't think it's going to continue now. I think the snaps will be a little limited, but I think that what we'll see is you'll want to get excited, you being the Dallas Goedert manager, but I think temper expectations. I've only got one fade for tight end.
So. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's kind of like, Travis Kelce and then insert random performance, right?
Absolutely.
Before we get into our play segment to finish off the show, don't forget to head over to underdogfantasy.com. Use the promo code FRAMES when you sign up to get a 100% match up to your first deposit up to $100. We do these ads every week. November, we got a couple signups. So yay! Congratulations to those who played. Hopefully we got you some bucks there. So yeah, that was good. That was pretty sweet. Let's see. Your fantasy dog here says, I got Kelce on 26 out of 41 teams. Yes, I do. First round. Yeah, he has a first round pick. But anyhow, going back to Underdog Fantasy, a lot of player props and the number of games you can, like, normally you have like your rivals game where it's like you have this player versus that player, who's going to score more or less on this stat, that stat. And some of them, earlier in the season were really tricky, not going to lie. But as the season has progressed, they've been giving you more and more options to pick from. So definitely it's a lot more fun, a lot more interactive, just great stuff. And they do every sport. So you can do basketball, you can do, I guess basketball is hockey, and of course the NFL. And you could do this year round if you wanted to if you had the itch for fantasy football drafts come February, well, you can start your best ball leagues in February. So it's a year-round app. Great stuff. Great opportunities to play with other fans there. So you go over to Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code FRAMES for a 100% match up to $100 today. And with that, let's get into our plays for the week. So I'm going to start with the comical one, if there was such a thing as a play that is comical. Oh. And you talked about them. You talked about the Cleveland situation. And originally I was going to say, this could be a situation for Deshaun Watson where he had a scrambling upside last week versus Baltimore. Maybe with the weather as it is, the receiver value not being there. Maybe we see more of him on the ground utilizing his legs, which could provide some type of like quarterback 2-ish, floor there. But, of all the talk we've been doing here, I'm kind of saying, fuck it. Let's go Gardner Minshew this week versus Dallas. I love it. Like last year in his only start, he had 25 passing attempts for 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 4 rushing attempts for 11 yards. And let's not forget, this is probably the best supporting cast he's had his entire career. You have A.J. Brown, who the Cowboys allow the 7th most wide receiver points to on the season. You have Devonta Smith. You have a potential returning Dallas Goedert. You have Miles Sanders. I mean, you got options. And so that's kind of like my sneaky play there. If you're the Jalen Hurts manager, I'll tell you somebody who I was surprised on Yahoo, ESPN, not so much Sleeper. Sleeper seems to be ahead of the game in certain areas, but on Yahoo and ESPN, he is like under 50% rostered. And that's people just dropping Russell Wilson, and rightfully so. What has he done all season? But everybody saw a couple weeks ago, he had that, horrible looking concussion versus the Kansas City Chiefs. But up until that point, he had 247 yards passing. He had 3 touchdowns, 57 rushing yards. Like, this was like vintage Russell Wilson. It's like, well, where has this been all season? And going against these Chargers this week, the Rams this week, not exactly a daunting thing when you don't have Aaron Donald all up in your face trying to make plays against you.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this complement of weapons back. I think the important thing here that makes me think Russell Wilson is a great play this week is the fact that the running game has kind of self-corrected. Latavius Murray had a big week last week. We're starting to see them emphasize a more balanced rushing attack here, and I think that can only help Russell Wilson's upside. And I'll tell you what, we look forward to this matchup here versus the Rams. Fantasy playoff championship week again, back in Kansas City versus your Chiefs, which could potentially be another repeat of what we saw a couple weeks ago, where again he put up close to 27 fantasy points. So somebody, if you have again space on your waiver wire and he just happens to be available in your league, add.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's on New Year's Day. You know that lame ass Russell Wilson ain't partying New Year's Eve, so he'll be well rested.
Yeah, quite the opposite. Yeah.
Boring ass Russell eating nothing but a Subway sandwiches in bed by 9:30, watching probably some kind of the ball drop and gets all excited and hangs out with Ciara or whatever and gets giggly when it drop countdown. I'm sure that's probably mean towards Russell Wilson, but I don't really care for him. He's blah.
I mean, aside from the whole Ciara thing, you just described my New Year's for the past 3 years. So,
right. Well, you're also
anyhow.
Moving on. I'm 10 years older than Russell Wilson, so
yeah, there you go. I feel so much better now that you said that. That's
exactly.
Let's go to my running back plays this week. He is the Fantasy Pros and half PPR scoring running back 31. AJ Dillon. Let me talk to you about AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones from weeks 13 through 15. AJ Dillon, 29 rushing attempts to Aaron Jones's 26. AJ Dillon, 129 yards to Aaron Jones's 116. This is average per game. 4.6 yards per attempt for Dillon, 4.5 yards per attempt for Aaron Jones. Since week 12, AJ Dillon 16.3, 19.4, and 26 points per game. Miami is allowing the 10th most points to the running back position. Green Bay is learning. They learned. They learned that let's let these running backs, let's let the best two players on the field do their thing. And no disrespect to Christian Watson, but these guys are the most talented players that they have on the field. Maybe Watson will be that one day. Maybe Dobbs will be that next year, Watson next year. But for right now, these are the Packers' most trusted weapons. Every time I turn on a Packers game, I see them both on the field at the same time more often than not, which it's like good misdirection. Have them run a jet sweep and have the other one go up the middle, and let's see who's going to get the ball. Both have been viable fantasy starts for you. But the fact that A.J. Dillon is RB31 is crazy. You look back, again, weeks 13 through 15, he's the RB3 in points per game with averaging 20 points per game. So he is definitely a smash play. All the fantasy managers that have held on to A.J. Dillon this entire season is like, when is he going to be the RB2 that we need? Now is that time.
You're out of the playoffs because you had him the entire year and he didn't do shit. Great.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah. So somebody to definitely play this week, and I think going forward for the rest of the fantasy playoffs. Another running back here I want to talk about. Similar situation. And that's, of course, talking about Tyler Algier of the Atlanta Falcons. Let's look at Algier versus Cordero Patterson's stats per game, weeks 13 through 15. Algiers, 27 attempts. Cordero Patterson, 25. 191 yards to 112 yards. 7.1 yards per attempt, 4.5 yards per attempt. Since week 12, of course, they had a bye week in there. 11 attempts, 10 attempts, 17 attempts, increasing attempts for Algier. For Patterson, 11, 14. And we saw last week Desmond Ridder came on the scene, and you know what? They should have put Mariota back in there because it was basically the same result in terms of quarterback fantasy performance there. But what did it do? You have the rushing upside of this quarterback who, it opens the door for these running backs. And I think even against a tough Baltimore matchup, they just gave up 99 yards to Nick Chubb, although, he's Nick freaking Chubb, right? I still think the production is there. The 7.1 yards per attempt, though, for Tyler Algier, that's the thing. That's pretty scary in terms of having high upside. And I want to say he was the RB in Fantasy Pros ECR. He's the RB 37. So I mean, it's and he's probably available. Where did I have him at? Let me pull up his rostership percentage heading into this week. He was not on my phone. Let me go to my article here at fantasyandframes.com, which you can read both of our waiver wire articles, both for offense and IDP. Tyler Algier heading into this week, ESPN 33.5%, Yahoo 37%. Again, going with Sleeper 66%. They seem to know something there on that app. So for people in your ESPN and Yahoo leagues, if he's available, pick him up. And then my last running back here, I got an extra one here, and we talked about him with the situation in Indianapolis. Zach Moss versus Deion Jackson. In his only start this week in replacement of Jonathan Taylor, he had 10 targets, 10 receptions, 79 yards, and a rushing touchdown. They're going to be behind in this game versus the Chargers. The Chargers are playing motivated football. They want to secure that playoff spot, which I think they already have. I think they just want to hold on to it and increase their chances of making sure that they can hold on to it. Justin Herbert's playing lights out. There was a scare last week with Austin Eckler coming out of the game for a couple of plays, but he went back in. The receiving options are healthy. The tight end is viable, Gerald Everett. It should be a fun game to watch if you're a Chargers fan. And as a result, you have Nick Foles coming in there. He's probably not going to want to set the world on fire passing the ball every which way. So they're probably going to have a conservative game plan. And just because it's a conservative game plan, that being the case, I don't think Zach Moss is the answer. I think it's Deion Jackson, the guy who's been there all season, who's shown he can do this. He can play in the receiving role. So definitely have the upside with him. So for my starts or plays this week at running back, it's A.J. Dillon, Tyler Algier, and Deion Jackson. And then for my plays at quarterback, it's Russell Wilson and fuck it, Gardner Minshew. That should be his nickname. Just fuck it, Gardner Minshew. So
sounds like a plan. I don't know how well the nickname would stick amongst
you think Matthew Berry's not saying that on
probably not
Sports Night in America or whatever it is on NBC?
I would doubt it. But I'm guessing that would be a good one that the kids would love to pick up and start saying.
Absolutely.
So, that's
so
Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson over Bam, Brian Robinson, Zach Moss. Yeah, I mean, at the way it's going right now, the Zach Moss take, which I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you were with this Fantasy Dog, is it Moss's upside is entirely dependent upon their usage of him. Let me finish that because that sounds in my head. I was like, well, no shit. They need to be up in the game. They can't be trailing. If they're trailing big against the Chargers, my concern is it's a Deion Jackson game more than anything. But we've seen Indy can get ahead. I mean, they did it last week, which not for long, as we've talked about. But, yeah, I would probably start Algier
and
Patterson. Man, over each one of those three, I think so. I think I would. I would. It's close, though.
Yeah.
I hate to not,
Yeah,
I would probably do Algier over Patterson myself.
I would too, and I guess I would substitute Knight in there or for Patterson if I. Then again, that's me. I'm like superstitious. I kind of like want to diversify my bonds, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so putting all my eggs in one basket for Algier and Patterson, probably not. But I would definitely go Algier in this matchup. They've just been more efficient.
Yeah, I hate to have two running backs on the same. I mean, unless it's just a situation, and it usually very rarely unfolds that both produce to what you need when you start two of them from the same team. I mean, it can happen, but it's that usage is just weird. That's the craziest thing about Atlanta. Here we think, and even like Keith was saying on Sunday, and I didn't necessarily agree, is that he thinks that Arthur Smith is going to, with Desmond Ridder, utilize this offense better and become more pass heavy. And they didn't. I mean, they were trailing in like 80% of the game, and they still couldn't even sustain more than like a 43% passing rate, which is like the low. I mean, they're on pace to be one of the lowest ever, behind next to the Bears. But what does he say? He has so many teams not using unless half. Yeah, and I understand that, and that's what gets tricky. As you get down to the very end, you want to diversify, and I get it. But
yep, gotta comment. You guys are good. You know what? You're good.
Yeah,
you're awesome. You're awesome, Fantasy Dog.
Thanks. Cheers, buddy.
Let's go to wide receiver plays, Nate.
You got it. You know what? I'm gonna go tight end real quick.
Okay.
Because I might have to switch it up.
Okay.
And I don't. So my initial play was Chigakonkwo against Houston, Tennessee, but the news just came out a couple minutes ago that Ryan Tannehill's probably out for the season.
Wow.
Yeah, his ankle injury looks like it's going to require surgery. I don't like what Malik Willis means for that passing team. I think if you could move Derrick Henry up any higher, I don't know if it's possible, but yeah, I worry about a Conwo. I can tell you my pivot would be Kate Otten. I think Tampa. See you, dog. Have a good Merry Christmas to you and yours as well.
Likewise.
Thank you. Kate Otten has a good matchup. I think that if I'm looking at anybody outside that top 12, Tampa against Arizona. Arizona defensively against the tight end has been the worst in football, or the best in terms of giving up points. So I'll just go with the lowest hanging fruit and say Kate Otten in that situation. Even though Okongwu has been, God, he's been so good. That's what I hate so much. I mean, we're talking 20% target share in like 4 straight weeks almost. But either way, but that's just a little bit of the breaking news. Ryan Tannehill most likely out for the season from what I've seen. Yes. My starts at wide receiver, though, are a little more fun. We're going to start with the Houston versus this Tennessee game, which without Ryan Tannehill might mean even more Houston offense now. Chris Moore, if that is a good segue from more to more.
I see what you said there.
Is. Yeah, I didn't mean to. But he's the ECR. He's a wide receiver 40. This game against Kansas City was one that was more point heavy than it should have been last week for Houston. Like I said earlier, due to the turnovers, the short fields, the penalties, etc. And in turn, even with all the points, he only had a 4 for 42 performance. I think that's going to scare a lot of people off. But if you look at the last 2 weeks, Chris Moore has had a near 40% target share. Granted, that's up without Nico Collins, without Brandon Cooks. The Titans, they allow the most points to opposing wide receivers in half-point PPR scoring. I'm not going to say he's going to put up week 14 type production, where he went 10 for 124. But I like Chris Moore as like a wide receiver 3, even maybe as a 2 against his Tennessee offense or defense, where we've seen that they just demolish the run. And so Devontae Freeman, but that is, I don't think the running game gets started at all in Houston. Look for Chris Moore to have a solid upside game. And then last but not least, against my Kansas City Chiefs, you talked about it earlier. You said I was going to mention them. It's Marquise Goodwin, Tyler Lockett, hand surgery, out this week, might return week 17. Ultimate for me in like the boom bust type volume day for Godwin. We've seen this. So let's go back to week 14. Solid route percentage, and that upside was there. I mean, 80% of the passing plays that week against Carolina, put up a 5 for 95 and a touchdown. The Chiefs just not really good against the receivers. I mean, pretty generous. We're 30.3 fantasy points per game, which is 6th worst in the NFL right now. KC pass rush has been bad. I think that leads to a lot of opportunity for Geno Smith to find Marquise Goodwin. And even with that speed, beat us deep and potentially have that big, even if it's not a 25% target share like Tyler Lockett, I think that we could see legitimate 75 plus yards and a touchdown is on the table.
Random. I said we were going to end this show on a up note. This is going to be kind of a little bit of a downer. As everybody here is watching, and everybody, Nate, you included, we all get emotional when it comes to football. I don't think I've ever been more emotional watching football than I believe it was 2017 or 2018 when Goodwin was with the 49ers, when he caught a huge Hail Mary pass from Jimmy Garoppolo. It was probably the most touching football plays I've ever seen in my life. For those who have questions as far as what that is about, DM me at Jorge B. Edwards on Twitter. I will let you know. Very emotional, very much pulling for his success in the NFL, and that's a really great take. Really love that. Really love that advice there.
Nice.
So that's going to do it here for Fourth and Frames. Again, we're deviating from our schedule this week because of the holidays. So our pregame show will be starting at 8:30 p.m. on Friday. That's 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be covering every single game like we do every single week, plus answering all of your start and sit questions. So join us on Friday night, the day before Christmas Eve, if you celebrate, or as the others say who don't, day before Saturday, and just have some fun with that. Stick with us here on YouTube, Twitter, and YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. There we go. On our Fantasy and Frames page, because we got Shoot the Gap next, our IDP pod with Mike Wohlert and Nate. And so for Nate, I'm Jorge. Y'all have a good one, and good luck this week in Week 16. See you on Friday.
Cool. See y'all.